everybody, and welcome to the Foodservice Power Plant Network. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tom Stritch. The first thing I'd like to do is thank Jason Wange for inviting me and asking me to guest host this evening. So I'm very excited to do that. Tonight, as many of you know, we will be interviewing Brigadier General Joe Ricciardi. But before I introduce him, I would like to introduce somebody else. Please allow me to introduce Joe. Joe is a husband, he's a father, he's a son, he's a brother, he's a nephew, and he's a friend. He's a real friend. You know, the kind that's with you when crap hits the fan. That's the kind of friend he is. That is Joe Ricciardi that I know. Now, after all that, please allow me to introduce Brigadier General Joseph Ricciardi. Now, aside from the long list of credentials that I will promise I will spare you of, the one thing that I think it's critical to know about Joe Ricciardi, General Joe Ricciardi is not only a general in the U.S. Army. Joe holds something that I don't know of anybody else who holds this. Joe has a Ph.D. in values-driven leadership from Benedictine University, one of the best in the world. And you may be thinking, wow, that's pretty amazing that he did that, because I think that. But something I'd like everybody to realize is Joe did not get that Ph.D. sitting in a classroom drinking a Diet Coke. He got that sleeping in a tent, and God only knows what kind of temperatures, in countries that none of us want to go to. So Joe, as impressed as I am by you, and as much as I value your friendship, thank you for your service. With that, let's bring on Joe Ricciardi. And as we do, I have one quick disclaimer. Tonight, although we will be interviewing Joe Ricciardi, everything he shares tonight, his thoughts and his ideas, which I hope most of you take copious notes, are Joe's. And they do not necessarily reflect that of the U.S. Army. Okay, we had to say that. There we go. Bring them on. Joe, welcome to the Foodservice Power Plant Network.
Appreciate the quite embellished introduction, but thank you.
You're welcome. Love it. All right, my friend, let's get right into it. Let's address the 400-pound gorilla that people have been asking me since they heard we were going to do this. What the heck has Joe Ricciardi been doing for the last couple of years? I haven't seen him. So Joe, you haven't been in the industry. What are you up to?
Well, Tom, I've been a Sherpa in the Himalayas for most of the time. But other than that, I spent some time. I had a great opportunity to go work for a restoration and construction company. And, they had a motto that said, we give back what disaster took. And it was just it was a great time to really connect with people. Again, finding that purpose. And about a little over a year after that, I had the opportunity to go on active duty and take a job in the Pentagon. And those chances at this point in life don't come that often. So it was one of those that I couldn't say no to.
That's awesome, Joe. That's awesome. Well, let me ask you, speaking of the Pentagon, what in the world is it like to work there?
Well, before I'll start with that one. I'm still in the honeymoon phase of the Pentagon, Tom, and when I get out of my car, I still have to pinch myself a little bit and go like, holy crap, I work in the Pentagon. It's pretty special. It's a special place to be. In some ways, though, it's no different than my first job going and flipping burgers at McDonald's. I mean,
How so?
you wake up in the morning with a good attitude. You go to where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. You be nice to other people, and you do your best. So in that aspect, it's not a tremendously different experience, but the work that I get to do there is pretty cool.
I can only imagine what it's like. And I have to share this with people. When Joe and I were business partners a few years back, Joe was, and you correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Joe, you led a battalion in Hawaii. And you were Army Reserve, so it was weekend a month and some other times. And Joe would take a red-eye flight out of Chicago on a Thursday night, land in Hawaii Friday morning, go to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, take a red-eye flight Sunday night back to O'Hare. I think you showered at a buddy's place and was at the office with the most enthusiastic, positive, upbeat, focused attitude I've ever seen by 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday.
Till about noon.
Yeah. A little bit of that was true.
No. Hey, but enough about me, Tom. Coincidentally, you've been out of the industry for a couple of years too. What have you been up to?
Well, I can tell you, for me, I have worked on my most valuable asset, and that's Tom. I made a promise to Carrie, my wife, for those of you who don't know, when we got married many, many moons ago, I said, I'll take care of me for you, and you take care of you for me. And if we both do that, we'll be in pretty good shape. And you know what, Joe? Whether it was the pandemic, a few other things, I had stopped doing that to the best of my ability, taking care of me. So I have focused on me, my mental health, my physical health, my family, and I have been enjoying life like I haven't for years. So it's been pretty exciting. Thank you.
No, that's awesome. I could tell by the pictures in Chicago last week.
Yeah. Yep. Life is pretty good for me.
So I'm going to pretend that it's 7 years ago or so, and I'm driving to work at about 5 o'clock in the morning, which makes it 4 o'clock in the morning in South Carolina, when I call you and ask you every day for a year and ask you, say, hey, help me understand what's going on in the industry. Help me understand this. Help me understand that. So you've remained pretty connected. What tell me from your perspective what's going on in the industry.
Well, I'll tell you just a couple of things from conversations that have come up recently with people. And this will sort of set the stage, I think, for you and I to talk about some things that are going on in the industry and how maybe we can share some ideas or some tools that would help people navigate through some of the things that are going on. So first off, I would say I was talking with Chris Perotti recently at CIFA, and she was telling me that finally, it seems like we're getting some young people in the industry, because for years, as you know, we have struggled getting young people into the food service industry. And at least according to Chris, we're seeing that somewhat change now. And I think that's really, really exciting. Some of the other things, I had a great conversation. Actually, this is last week. Drew O'Quinn from Singer Thompson Little called me last week out of the blue. We got to talking, and I said, Drew, what are some of the things that are going on? Because I was telling him you and I were doing this talk tonight. And he said, Tom, it is so hard to, deal with these supply chain issues. I mean, the lead times are just horrible. And holding pricing on jobs is more difficult than ever. And the conversation's going on, and you'll appreciate this. Drew says to me, he goes, Tom, I just wish it was the way it used to be. It didn't have to be this hard. And I started laughing, and Drew, I think he got quiet, like, why are you laughing? I was being pretty serious. I said, Drew, I'm sorry, but I believe I heard your dad say that to me word for word 15, 20 years ago. That's exactly what your dad said. And what that tells me, Joe, is that just as Drew's dad had to adapt to changing times, he didn't like it, but if he was going to succeed, and he did, he had to adapt. He had to evolve. And then his son had to come in and adapt and evolve and learn that, which Drew did, mastered it, and then he took it to the top. And now, once again, based on the climate and the market and the things that are happening, i.e. supply chain, we have to adapt and evolve again. So hopefully you and I will share some things tonight that will give people some ideas. And as I say that, I'd also like to ask the audience this evening, as you see these topics come up, let's use the synergy of the Food Service Power Plant Network to go ahead and share these ideas. If you have an idea and it's a winning idea, share it with us. Let us share it with the group. So that being said, Joe, I think the industry is evolving. What used to be an occasional supply chain issue where you've got a bad apple supplier, or I was actually part of a supplier that moved a factory, and anybody who had to live through that, you have my empathy as well. That was brutal, right? But when a factory did that, everybody knew their lead times were going to stink for a long period of time. They just knew it. Now it's commonplace. Now lead time issues are every day. And the other thing that I'd say, Joe, as we tee this conversation up, is I'm guessing, I don't know this, so I'll be happy to take some feedback from the audience, but I don't think those extra 5% that you and I were asked about all the time, and what everybody on this call was probably asked about, I don't even think that one guy in New York, and I'm not going to mention his name, but my guess is everybody knows who he is, even he's not getting that extra 5 these days.
I wonder what he's doing with all his free time.
Well, I'll tell you, I have to believe with the things that the industry is facing today, relationships are critical, right? And my experience has been that when you have a great relationship, price is a factor, but it's less of a factor. And flip that over, when your relationship is less than great, anything less than great, then price is more of a factor. So that being said, Joe, let me ask you, with your new position, I have to believe that you have spent time in this past year building relationships at the highest level in our government. And they have to be strong, right? And they have to be based on, I don't want to steal your thunder, trust, commitment, integrity. What have you found that you've utilized that would be applicable to everybody in our industry, in the food service industry?
No, good question. I might open that up with just a little bit about what my job, currently entails, and
okay.
And I could start that by saying, we take guidance from Congress and the president through the secretariat, who writes policy, and then we take their policy and we implement guidance to Army installations around the world. But I don't see it that way. But that's what we do. But what I see is every day waking up and making a difference in every soldier's life, that soldier's family's life, the civilians that work on the Army installations, that we're making decisions that affect where they live, where they put their children in school, where they put them in childcare. That's what the Army G9 does on an everyday basis. And so when you talk about relationships at this level, it's huge because there are so many people involved. I mentioned the Army Secretariat. But you go down from all the commanders at every level down to that individual soldier and that soldier's family. So you have to think through all of the answers, all the possible scenarios on any decision. And in order to do that, you have to have people that you trust, that you have relationships at every one of those levels, so you could bounce your ideas off them to make sure that you're not just running blind. So it's hugely important, but not only, laterally across, your peers, but so much to go all the way down to that individual person that you're really, at the end of the day, making an impact for.
That's awesome. And I have to believe that can be related as well to our industry, because I look at some of the people, whether it be Bolt, right? Adabonte, it could be David Maxwell, it could be anybody. They have to make decisions and think about who is this going to affect along the line, whether it be their teammates back at the dealership, whether it be their supplier partners, whether it be the end user, whether it be a contractor. They have to incorporate all these people into decisions. And when they don't, I'm guessing if you don't, and I don't want to ask you if you've been caught with your pants down, but I'm guessing, my Lord, at that level, you miss somebody, you'll probably hear about it pretty quick.
Yeah. I mean, and as people that are on this call, rise up through the ranks, that's the same thing. It's going from the carpenter who's worried about bringing his or her tools to a job and pounding nails, to the person that's running the job, to the general contractor, to the person that's planning the community. I mean, at every level, there's so much more going on.
Again, I'm going to ask everybody, if you've got any questions for Joe, shoot them over as it pertains to these topics. All right, Joe. While we wait on that, let's transition from relationships for just a moment. I had the opportunity a few years back to hear you speak at FENS Magazine's Fed Talk. I remember it like it was yesterday. War, love, and leadership, boom, right? I had goosebumps. Let me ask you, since then, your career has taken a change, right? Your opportunities have changed, your visibility, your experience have changed, right? We've had a pandemic since then. From a leadership perspective, what are some notes that you feel you could share with us that maybe what's changed since that Fed Talk that would give us a new, more updated current nugget of leadership?
Well, for those of you that hadn't seen what Tom's talking about, the speech that I gave was focused on what I called driving to the boom. And it had to do with my experiences as a route clearance commander, where myself and 1,000 of my best friends at the time every day got to wake up and drive into minefields. And at some point, you ran into the boom. You drove to the boom, and sometimes you found it and you made the boom happen in your way, and other times that it happened in other ways. But the whole part, though, was based on my Ph.D. research of love and leadership. And how has that changed? I think it's been magnified since then, Tom, because the whole COVID experience, right? Going out and living and not knowing, going outside, not know if you're going to get COVID, who's going to get COVID, is it going to be good, is it going to be bad, is somebody going to die? That's life. That's walking around. That's walking to the boom. And we did that for a year. And I think the principles from my research, right, that said, hey, you know what, as a leader, if you display that care, that love to the people that are around you, that you work with and that work for you, those leaders that display those aspects of love are gonna emerge better off through that pandemic and through those times. And I gotta say, I'll get ahead of myself here, but I got to get a shout out to Mark Rossi and the tribe there, because that's a loving leader right there, and he's got an organization that looks out for one another and takes care of one another. And look at what the results did there. I mean, they took home the gold at.
They did. Dealer of the Year, baby. So excited for that team.
Yeah.
So, Joe, let me ask you. You mentioned love, and you mentioned leadership, and not a lot of people put those two together. In fact, each of us, and probably all of us on this call, have seen people who refer to themselves as quote unquote leaders, and love is not quite in their toolbox. What would you say to young people coming up wanting to be a leader, and what they see is someone just putting the hammer down, demanding certain results before earning, educating, take it from me?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, based on the research that I did, I broke down love into three components. Well, I didn't break it down. I used someone else's model that had it just broken down as three components of intimacy, passion, and commitment. And so, a little bit to what you just said there, Tom, there's leaders that are highly committed, and they're in before everybody. They're the last to leave at night. All they talk about is work and the grind. And there's passionate, enthusiastic leaders that are out there that are grandstanding and great with their words and motivational in that aspect. And then there's intimate leaders, and those leaders that display true care, authentic concern and care about the people that they're with, and understand them. They know their families, they know their birthdays, they know the details about those individuals. And the research that I did showed that passion and commitment were important, but they really didn't move the needle. It really had to do with the bond that a leader had with his folks that really made the difference. And when leaders scored high on the intimacy level, the scale that said how much they were respected and looked up to from the team was also considerably higher.
I hope people on here are taking note of that. To me, that's extremely powerful. So, Joe, talk to me. Rumor has it, I was, once again, I'm not, Maureen, I'm really not trying to plug you guys, right? But FENS magazine, I'm looking at the banquet, and I see you were at NRA this year. What are you doing at NRA? Come on.
Why wouldn't I be at NRA?
There.
Before I answer that, I gotta thank Maureen and Joe for the invitation. I do realize how 3 years of awards going on there, and for you guys to make room for me, that was really, really special for me. My friends at Continental Refrigeration that invited me to sit at their table. And then, I talked about, being there for Mark to win his big award, but also have to, thank Chris Brady from Romano Gatlin. And Chris was truly my host who got me down there. And for those of you who saw me sporting the Romano Gatlin lanyard there. So, many thanks to Chris as well.
So you mentioned Chris Brady, and somebody wise once told me, and it was my father. He told me a long time ago, back when he was alive, he said, Tom, don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to. So with that thought in mind, you and Chris Brady have a special relationship, don't you?
We do. It's an interesting one. Probably Tom.
It was interesting, Joe. Sorry.
Not long after you and I met. I had gone on we were doing the rounds, meeting everybody, and went to New York City, and there was a tour of 9/11 Memorial and the museum set up, and Chris Brady was the host. And for those of you that don't know, Chris has a very personal story to tell about 9/11, where one of his close family members had perished in the towers. And during the introduction, he and I talked for a little bit, and he found out that what I did for a part-time in uniform, and we just had a strong bond after that. And it's been that way ever since. But it was really special. It is really special.
Awesome. Well, he's a good man. Good man. So tell me a little more about the Army right now. When you and I were talking the other day, you said it's interesting, Tom, because right now, Army is number one. It's my only job. Tell me about that.
Well, I haven't had just one job in about 30 years, Tom. So it is really great to have one job and be focused on that. And just like you said, a little focus on myself. To some degree, didn't realize how much mental energy that it takes to run two careers. But getting back to Chris, since I've been out of the industry for a little while, Chris has been great in sharing with me, all the really awesome things that he's doing and really transforming his business, and I think transforming the industry. And so for me to be able to be on the sidelines and work with him while he's doing that has been pretty special.
That's awesome. Awesome. Just a couple of notes here. Larry Rosenthal. Hey guys, missing you both. I can't speak for Joe, but I miss you, Larry, a lot.
Larry, we should go out for seafood and feed Tom some melon.
Yeah, let's do that. And let's cover the rest of that conversation later. That works for me. Okay. All right, so I've got some questions here, and I'm going to start out with a question that Jen Bolt sent in for you. And Joe, here's a question from Bolt. What is the single most important piece of advice you have received in your career? And it cannot be Tom Stritch said that's a career-ending move. Don't do that. Right? Bolt actually didn't say that. And if you could go anywhere for dinner in the world, where would you go and what would you order?
Best advice in the world is the person that said, love your soldiers and they'll move mountains. That's what really started my research and us down this trail. Dinner, Bolt. I think I'd start at Ilupa in Honolulu for what I think is the best meatball in the world, and then fly to Pisa. And there's a little restaurant outside the train station in Pisa that has the best 3-cheese ravioli in the world. And then from there, I'd go to Messina Sinagra, the town where my grandparents were born, and they have a bakery there, and I'd have dessert and coffee there. That would be my dinner.
Hey Joe, just so you know, Jason gave me full operation of the controls. If you don't mention chili at my house, I'm gonna knock you off of here so fast.
I think we made your chili at my house where it was really good.
Oh, it was there, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
What is our chili? We want the plug. All right, here's one from David Maxwell. If you could go back and give your 21-year-old self one good piece of advice, what would it be?
I thought is that question to you, Tom?
If I could go back to my 21-year-old self, I would say work harder on yourself than you do your job, and you will succeed. Work on yourself. It's your most valuable asset. And when I've done that in life, I've had tremendous success. And when I haven't, the results have shown. So that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, I would, I would say, always look for the positive in people. Everybody's got it out there. Everybody's trying to do a great job, no matter what. And we just gotta, and I would tell myself to focus on look for what's right. Right? Look for what people are doing right, and talk about that and compliment that. And I think you just create a better place when you do that.
Isn't it amazing? We've all seen some people who, without mentioning names, they think there's a prize for finding what's wrong. Well, it's real easy to find what's wrong. What takes more discipline, and which is 50 times more rewarding, is looking past whatever is wrong and finding what is right and accentuating that. And it's amazing how those people are more fun to be around than the people who get a prize for finding what's wrong all the time.
Very true. Very true, brother.
Well, staying on that note, one of the questions here is, we surround ourselves with people, or we should, who make us better. I believe, like for me, I think people are like buttons on an elevator, right? They're going to take us up or they're going to take us down. If they take us up, great. If they take us down, I'm going to do my best to bring them up. And if I can't bring them up, I'm going to get off the elevator and find another one, right? Who are you learning from right now? Who's in your elevator?
Tom, I think I got a big elevator, man.
I know.
Well, I didn't even mean that, but everybody. I mean, I don't think you can focus on one or two or three people and go, hey, I want to be like them, or I want to do that. I think you got to learn. You got to learn a little bit from everybody. In fact, what they say Monday, yesterday. I learned something from the crossing guard at M and Capitol Street here. I'm walking the dog, come to the corner, and there's this woman. She's a crossing guard, got her, bright jacket on, and traffic's going everywhere. There's a baseball game 2 blocks away. Cars are honking, doing whatever, and she stops and looks down and says, "Hey, that's a pretty dog you have there. Where are you guys from?" And say a couple nice words. She's like, "Hey, have a great day." And then boom, just like that, she's swinging her arms, blowing her whistle, and it made me think. I go, here's this woman who, it's not her job. Nowhere in her job description is make all the citizens of Washington, D.C. happy, right. Make friends while you're out there. No, her job's to make sure cars don't crash into one another. And in the midst of all her chaos and everything she's doing, and something that's not even her job, just took the time to stop, recognize a moment, make somebody feel good, and then get back to work. And I said, wow, you know what? If she could do it amongst all of that, when it's not even her job, leaders, what are us leaders doing when we're just bouncing between meetings and doing other things? And how many opportunities are we missing to go ahead and take that moment and make somebody feel great?
Wow. Find some way to make somebody smile. What do they say? A smile can never be kept. It can only be given away. Speaking of Stritchisms, I'm looking at Rossi over here. I don't know if you can read these questions. So, in the spirit of Mark Rossi, what's the largest room inside the Pentagon? Are you able to say what that room is?
I am. It's room for improvement, Tom.
Boom! Laka! Largest room in the world. It's a room for improvement. There you go, Mark. It's all yours, baby. Okay. So, Joe, there's a phrase in the food service industry that I have seen adopted for people to mitigate stress, right? That if something doesn't happen on time, nobody's going to die, right? I mean, we're not talking life and death here. People are going to be upset, they're going to be pissed, but they're not going to die. Yet you, as a leader in perhaps the most important organization in the world, where mistakes can lead to significant consequences for people, for our country, for the world. Knowing what you do about leadership, what does the food service industry need to do or see from their leaders?
I think I've got to go back to, you said it. I use that phrase a lot, and I think there was a few times when we worked together that you go like, man, how did you retain your composure when that happened? I'm like, hey, Tom, nobody's gonna die. Just take a breath. Nobody's gonna die here, and let's figure this out, right? Because getting worked up, increasing that anxiety, the emotion, becoming confrontational, all of that is counterproductive to those situations. So, I think it's a lot of the level-headedness that you need to retain. The sense of humor never hurts. But I think it's remaining calm. There's always another side of the story. It's putting yourself in that other person's shoes and trying to think, hey, why did this happen? And then only worry about those things that you can control yourself. Right? A lot of people get worked up about things that are out of their control, and that's really a wasted energy. If you didn't have a role in it, you couldn't have prevented it or changed it, and you just got to roll with it.
I can say, as someone who has worked with you closely and personally for years, everything Joe just said is exactly how he conducts himself when doing business. Joe, I got one last question for you here, and then we're going to start wrapping this up. But somebody asked, what do our military, our service men and women out there today need from us civilians right now? And how do you think the food service industry can potentially help with that?
So there's been a lot of press on different things that are going on with service members, but I don't think, to some degree, Tom, that's any different than the rest of the population. There's people everywhere, independent of what they do for a living, that go through hard times and ups and downs, and so my answer is a little bit, not focused on just the military, but it's everybody, and it's keep your eye on your friends, and you gotta watch for how they're doing. You gotta check up on them, and you gotta inquire when the audio doesn't match the video. A lot of times people will settle with, hey, they think they're doing it. Hey, how you doing? Okay, good. All right, see ya. They're not doing it. What I mean is truly in an authentic fashion. Check on people, and when. Don't be afraid to look for or really dig into, are you okay? Yeah, Zena, exactly. You got to do those wellness checks. And you got to care, and don't be afraid to jump in and help, because you might be that last person that has that opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. All right. As we wrap this up, there's a new trend that I noticed on social media after my hiatus for a while. And I noticed there's this new trend where people will give their profession and say the 5 things that they recommend you not do based on being in that profession. So being me, right, the guy who is so optimistic, he goes after Moby Dick in a rowboat, and I bring the tartar sauce with me, by the way, right? So that's an optimist. That being said, instead of looking at what not to do, I would just like to share with everybody, if you're in the food service industry, from someone who has been or was for a lot of years, these are the 5 things I would make sure I do every day. Number 1 is I would review my grateful list. The world can suck, but the world is awesome if we just take time to look through the blemishes and see the beautiful things that every one of our lives has. So make sure you write down a grateful list, look at it every day. Next, always be upfront and honest with everybody. If you have bad news for a customer, get it to them quickly, because they're going to get over it or die, and hopefully they'll get over it, but everybody's time to get over it is different. So start the clock. If you got bad news and you know it's not going to change, go ahead and get it off your plate and give it to them.
Bad news doesn't get better with time.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Number 3 is I would encourage everybody to make sure that you plan your next day before you shut down for today. I'll tell you what that will do. Aside from giving you better results, it will give you better sleep. You'll sleep better. I did. Next, I would find a minimum of 20 minutes a day to invest in your most important and most valuable asset, and that's yourself. 20 minutes to work on your mind, to work on your body, to work on your spirit, or any of those 3 combined together, individual, anything, but minimum 20 minutes a day on you. I said it earlier, work harder on yourself than you do your job. And last, I would recommend that every day call someone that you don't need anything from and just thank them. Thank them for their business. Thank them for their friendship. Thank them for their support. Thank them for being a good person. Thank them without needing anything in return on that phone call. And you'd be amazed how many people say, wow. So with that wraps this up. I'm going to see if we got any more questions here. Oh, wow. I have missed a lot of scrolling. Good job, Tom. Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate you. Yep. Jamil, thanks. Ryan. All right, everybody. If I missed your question, I apologize. Chris Perotti, thanks for joining us. I'd like to make sure that we thank the entire food service power plant network community. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks for spreading the positives every day. As Joe said, reach out to your friends. Make sure they're okay. Because sometimes they're not, and sometimes they are. So be there for everybody. Jason, again, thank you for allowing me to guest host, and thank you for bringing Joe on. And with that, I hope everybody has a winning day, and we'll see you at the top.
Thanks, Tommy.
You got it, brother. See you, man. Thanks.